What's going on, everyone? I hope you're having an awesome day so far, and welcome back to another episode of Chuck's Customs. Now, this isn't going to be a normal episode, it's mainly just going to be me talking. We're not working on nothing, so if you're not interested, skip the video. But in this video, I'm going to talk about how much I spent to do my Cummins swap on Bessie. The reason I'm doing this video is just to kind of get it out there, clarify, because I've been getting a lot of questions about how much it cost. And plus, this is something that I just kind of wanted to talk about ever since I started this project. So with that being said, I'm going to get right out there and say, it did not cost me anywhere near $10,000 to do this swap. Now, the reason I say that is because when I was doing all of my research, trying to figure out what I would need to do the swap, how I was going to do it, all that stuff, there was a ton of videos that I found of mechanics talking about how it's going to cost you at least $10,000. It wasn't just those guys either. I mean, go to any forum and a lot of the people on there will tell you it cost them $10,000. Now, maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't see where they're getting that number from. There's only 3 reasons why I could understand why they're saying it would cost $10,000. Reason number 1 that I can think of is maybe they're including the cost of a nice truck. In the figures I'm going to show you in a few minutes, I'm including the cost of Bessie. But Bessie only cost $400. Now, clearly it shows. I mean, the thing is riddled with rust. It had a bad engine in it. It had a toast transmission. The interior was okay if you don't include the fact that there were holes in the floor. But yeah, it shows. It's a $400 truck. Now, if you want to go get a nice, clean, square body Chevy, and you don't have one to begin with, that is, and it's got a nice straight body and nice paint and a nice, clean interior, okay, you're going to be spending close to anywhere between $4,000 to maybe $7,000 or $8,000. So with that number being thrown in there, I can see how it would cost close to or more than $10,000. Scenario number 2. Maybe they're talking about having you take the truck to a shop that's going to charge you an hourly rate to do the swap. In that case, even if you provide them with the truck, you provide them with all the parts and the engine, everything, that hourly rate is going to be what kills you, obviously. So that, again, I could see costing you well over $10,000. Now, for my third scenario that I can imagine for that cost is maybe you bought a donor truck that had the engine and transmission already in it and all the electronics and radiators and all that stuff that you would want to switch over to the other truck that's getting the engine. Depending on the cost of that donor truck, it could be anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000. I don't know. I didn't use a donor truck. Again, with that being said, maybe you might come close to $10,000. But I wouldn't know. I don't fall into any of those scenarios. I didn't get a donor truck. I didn't buy a nice, clean, square body for $5,000. And I certainly didn't pay anyone to do any kind of work for me. So now it's time for me to show you how much I spent. So I didn't keep track of all my receipts and, count every single penny as I spent it. So what I'm about to show you isn't necessarily a rough guesstimation, but it's close. I mean, regardless, it'll give you a really good idea of what exactly I spent. So, first off, cost of the truck was $400. You know what? This writing's kind of hard for you to see. I think I'm just going to put a little counter right up here to keep up with how much money I'm talking about. So yeah, $400 for the cost of Bessie. Now, I bought this truck off of a guy who drove it for a long time. I don't know, maybe like 20 years or so. But the poor truck had been sitting in his driveway for well over 10 years underneath an old oak tree. So that's going to explain a lot of the reason why it was in the condition it was in. Somehow, I managed to get it started and driving. It was one of the scariest driving experiences of my life, but I did it. I got it home. amazingly, and I actually drove it around for a couple days before the transmission just completely gave out. I tried to swap out with a different transmission, which was the wrong one, but me being as stubborn as I am, I made an adapter plate, put the transmission on, and that transmission lasted about a week before it too died a smoky death. So that was the point at which I said, screw this, I'm putting in a Cummins, I don't care what I have to do it, I don't know what kind of transmission to use, and I got online and started looking. I think the ad was on Facebook Marketplace, but I ended up finding my engine with a transmission. It came out of an old F700 moving truck, and the guy just wanted to get rid of it. With that being said, the engine with the transmission cost me a total of $1,800. I had no idea how I was going to put a school bus transmission or moving truck transmission into a half-ton pickup truck, but I was determined, so I said screw it. Now I really don't recommend doing this, but we will get to that closer towards the end of the video. So $400 for the cost of the truck, $1,800 for the cost of the engine and transmission. We're now up to $2,200. As far as the metal goes, I had to use 1/4-inch steel plate to make the engine mounts and a couple other things. I had to use 1/8-inch sheet steel to help box the frame. I had to use a piece of 2-inch steel pipe, 1 for the cross member and 2 for the transmission mount and cross member, whatever you want to call it. With all of that being said, I spent roughly about $100 on all of that metal. Now I can totally understand if you're depending on Home Depot or Lowe's to provide all that metal, you're going to be spending a lot more than $100. The reason it only cost me $100 is because I actually went to an industrial supply store and they sell any kind of metal that you could ever need, and because they do a lot more in wholesale than they do regular inventory, it's fairly cheap. I guarantee if you did a little bit of searching on Google, you'll find one pretty close to you. Hardware. I used all grade 8 nuts and bolts and lock washers and all that stuff for anything that I did. I wanted to make sure that whatever I bolted down wasn't going to snap and come falling off. So with all of the grade 8 nuts, bolts, washers, and all of the brass fittings that I had to buy for various things while I was kind of messing with the engine, I spent anywhere between $50 to $75. Now, grade 8 nuts and bolts, they're easy to find. I'm not sponsored by anyone in this video at all. No, I've never had a sponsor before, okay? I'm just going to throw that out there. So any website or store that I mention, they don't have any hand in this video. There's a Napa Auto Parts right down the road here, and they have any grade 8 nuts, bolts, and washers that I needed for this project. They've got them all on a big wall. You just go over, find what size and thread you need, and it was there. Thankfully, they're not very expensive, so that's why I say it cost me about $50 to $75 for every bit of hardware that I needed. And now finally for the most expensive section, parts. Now there's a lot of parts that I had to buy for this truck because I didn't have a donor vehicle. A lot of the stuff that was already on Bessie needed to be replaced because it was either rotting away or like the radiator was clogged, plus it was too small. Any kind of hoses or brake lines, all that stuff. I just wanted to start fresh. This is a list of all the parts that I had to buy for my swap. Fuel tank from Rock Auto was $60. The radiator from Rock Auto was $120. All of the hoses that I had to, source from various parts stores around town, that was another $50. Brakes I got from a local parts store. With the brakes I had to do the calipers, the pads, new master cylinder, new proportioner valve, and all new brake lines. Thankfully, square body Chevys are dirt cheap when it comes to that stuff, so that only cost me $220. Hydraboost. I got a brand new rebuilt Hydraboost from Rock Auto. That was $150. The intercooler with all of the plumbing, I got that from eBay. That was $80. Transmission cooler, I got that from a local parts store. That was 95 bucks. The electric radiator fans, got those off of eBay. Those were $65. The oil pan I got from Rock Auto. That was $100. The oil pickup tube, the rear oil pickup tube, that was $120. I got that from some website. I think it was like Extreme Diesel Performance or something like that. I can't quite remember. When I got the engine, it had a couple leaks and I had to open it up in a few places and I wanted to replace those gaskets. So all of the gaskets for everything that I touched was about $70. The vacuum pump and the exhaust. Okay, so the exhaust that I have on the truck right now, just that downpipe, that was $60. I got that from a local guy who had it laying around. He's done a bunch of stuff with these engines. So yeah, 60 bucks. That's also the same guy that I got the vacuum pump from. Now the reason I needed the vacuum pump with the power steering pump on it is because I pulled this engine out of that F700, as I mentioned before, and it had some weird hydraulic pump on it. I don't know what it was for or whatever, but I needed the vacuum pump. So that was an expense that I had to pay, but if you take it out of a Dodge pickup truck, you won't have to worry about that. You'll already have the vacuum pump on there. But just so you know, I got it used locally for $100. So far for the parts section, we're up to about $1,290. You know what, just to be safe, in case I underestimated on anything like the hoses or the gaskets, we'll round it up to $1,400. So, with that being said, truck's $400, engine and transmission was $1,800, the metal was $100, the hardware was about $50 to $75, and the parts cost me roughly $1,400. With that being all put together, that's $3,800 bucks. And you know what? We'll even throw some more cushion in there. We'll round that number up to $4,000. Because again, I just want to make sure that I'm not completely forgetting something or, underestimating on a few numbers. But yes, that is what this swap cost me. $4,000. A lot cheaper than $10,000. And also something to keep in mind, I did this swap completely by myself in this little one-car garage with a minimal amount of tools. Certainly no specialty tools at all. Oh, I remember now, I had to rebuild my steering box. The rebuild kit cost me about $18 from Rock Auto. So, that's why we put that cushion in there for $1,400. Little stuff like that adds up. I'll say this much, I know that my engine and transmission were really cheap compared to what I've heard a lot of people spending on their engine and transmission combo, but that's because I got it out of an old moving truck. So if you get it out of a Dodge pickup, maybe the owner will know a little bit more about what he's got and he will charge you more, or I don't know, guys. It's open to interpretation. So there you have it, guys. $4,000 is roughly what it cost me to do my Cummins swap on my square body Chevy. And that's including the cost of the truck. That's including me having to box in the frame, which a lot of people don't have to do because they use a heavier duty truck than a half ton. A lot of guys are doing these swaps to 3/4 ton or 1 ton trucks. So with that being said, you're probably going to save $100 in metal right there. One more thing I will add before I wrap this video up. The reason I say I don't recommend you getting a school bus transmission for your truck, reason number one, I had to cut a ton of my firewall and rebuild my transmission tunnel, as you saw. If I had a normal pickup truck transmission, it's way smaller, I wouldn't have had to do all that. The other reason why I don't recommend it, it was fairly slow. Now, I know a lot of that has to do with the gearing and the rear end and all that stuff, but that transmission was just never meant for such a lightweight truck. It's meant for down low torque, which isn't going to make you go very fast when it's trying to push more weight than you're giving it. So it's going to go through the gears really fast. And it's not meant for this truck, guys. It's meant for a giant truck that weighs anywhere from 25 to 40,000 pounds. It's not going to work. It worked as far as getting it in the truck and driving it down the road, but as far as being a comfortable driving vehicle, that transmission just is not the way to go. And on top of that, I'm not done spending, because that transmission failed me. If you follow me on Instagram, you'd have already seen it. Yeah, I was driving home one night and the transmission just went from having 5-speed in reverse to having 7 neutrals. So that's fun. I don't know what happened. It's beyond me. It didn't make any kind of grinding noise. It didn't shift hard. Nothing was bad about it. It just stopped working. I don't know why. Maybe it's some kind of safety mechanism in the transmission. It realized that it wasn't pushing the amount of weight that it needs to push, and I don't know. I have no idea. But the reason I say I'm not done spending is because now I'm going to have to take that transmission out, and I want to get a nice pickup truck sized transmission to put in it. I'm thinking of buying an NV 4500 5-speed manual. I think that'd be the perfect transmission for this truck. I've already got one that I found. The guy wants $1,000 for it. Needs a new clutch and stuff, but whatever. So that's going to be another $1,000 on top of that $4,000. So preemptively, I'm going to say $5,000 for the swap. Well, there you have it, guys. That's what I spent on my Cummins swap. And that's why I say don't believe all the hype when someone tells you it's going to cost you 10 grand to do this to your truck. It's not going to cost you 10 grand. Just be mindful of the parts that you're buying. Know where to get the best deal. Do your research before you just go buy a part, because I guarantee no matter what you find, if you look a little bit harder, you'll be able to find it somewhere else for cheaper. Alright guys, so with that being said, I'm going to wrap the video up here. Also, I was thinking of doing an About Me video, because I've gotten quite a few people asking me if I'm going to do an About Me video. And I did kind of just jump right into things, so you guys don't really know anything about me. But, along with that, I don't really know what people would want to know about me. So, if you guys want to know more about me, go ahead and let me know in the comments section what you'd like me to share with you about myself. So, that's going to be it for today's episode, everyone. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and show that thumbs up button some love. If you didn't like what you saw, or you have suggestions for a future episode or what have you, go ahead and let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you guys. And as always, if you want to see what we're going to be getting into next here on Chuck's Customs, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. So, thank you everyone for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time on another episode of Chuck's Customs.